What's up, everybody? Wanted to get back into Toyota parts, and so this is my spare G52 or a G54. I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna end up having to look into it. Looks to me like it is a forward shift, so it might be a G54. The G52s were, or no, my bad. I'm sorry. G52 as opposed to a G54 because G54s were top shift, not forward shift. And this is no, this is a top shift. That's what I'm saying. To me, it looks like, no, forward shift. See, I get these things confused. I can never understand if it's that the two on the transmission mean they're forward. Yeah, they are forward shift. Yeah, you're shifting from that. Yeah, there we go. So this is a forward shift transmission, and that's good because I have a spare forward shift, or what I have is a top shift and a forward shift. So when I do doublers, I'm gonna end up having to have the top shift on the front, so I might have to get the conversion for this, and then the forward shift on the rear or something like that. I do believe. I'm not quite sure which one it is. I think it's the rear that needs to be top shift. But anyway, I still have all the parts, and I'm getting to that point, so I'm going to tear this apart. There are no videos on this on YouTube. I happen to have several videos going down there. You can probably see through my videos that it's the head gasket replacement that everybody watches. I babble a lot in that video, like you can clearly see I'm doing now, but I've gotten better at it. So let's get down to what really is the case. I'm going to tear into this thing. I need to see what's going on, what's wrong with it, even before I get the rebuild kit, because to me it doesn't matter. It's just coming apart anyway. Spare. So that everybody knows what the count on all the bolts are. Here's the bell housing. You can see them. Everything's lit up for your pleasure. Now you can count them, and I'm almost positive that's what tells you what the difference is between a G52 / G54 and a W56. I'm almost positive. I think it's the center bolts right here that all matter. The 8, I think there's 8 right here, and maybe there's 7 on the other ones. But yeah, first thing I'm going to do right now, though, is to take the bell housing off. The bell housing is just a casing around the transmission that should come off immediately, just easily. So once that's off, then we can work from there. I just wanted to get a roundabout of the transmission so that everybody can see. The input spline looks very good. I don't see any chunkums on there. It seems to actually look like it's in fairly good condition on the rear right here. So that's actually fairly good. I'll be pulling out this seal and see if it even comes out. Obviously, nope. Can't just pull on it, even though I can get my finger around it. But yeah. So I'm going to start tearing into this, and this is going to be a project, and I will be posting it to YouTube so that everybody in the Toyota community at least has a video of how to rebuild a Toyota transmission. This is for a carbureted vehicle. Obviously the EFIs came with a W56, but I can't see that they would be very much different, seeing as how all it is its gear ratio as opposed to anything else. So, and obviously maybe top shift, you know what I mean. So that's what I'm going to do. If this is at least upgradable to a G54, I'm going to try and see if I can do that. I understand the G54 has bigger bearings. I need to research a little bit more into that, but that's my ultimate goal, is to essentially upgrade this from a G52 to a G54 if at all possible. If not, then just rebuild it and swap it in. Mine chunked the third gear, and every time I'm in third gear, you sit there and hear it just clunk, 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 clunk. Horrible, believe me. I drove to Oregon like 1,000 or 2,000 miles like that, and you just avoid third at all possible. And third gear is really your power gear, so you really need third gear. So, yeah, gonna get into this. Gonna take the bell housing off, and I'll get back to you. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a 14 millimeter um, on an extension because it's a little harder to reach into the bell housing. But all I'm gonna do is just get off the bell housing bolts, and that'll be it. I'm using my cheap air driver. It should do the trick right now. So glad I have that extension. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. What's happening here? There we go. Oh, toughie. I feel like maybe that one's probably grabbing. I'll get that one off and see what happens. Okay, so once all those bolts are off, it's off. I didn't have to mess with anything. That one bolt was still there. I just needed to prop up the transmission a little bit. It's on, if you can see, it's on that little block. It just needed a little bit of a prop up. It wasn't going to easily slide off, so once I propped it up, it was able to slide off real easy. And thankfully, if you watch the other video, the one before this, where I'm just sitting there willy-nillying the transmission or the bell housing bolts, I wouldn't recommend that. I had a feeling that every single one of these bolts was going to be the same size. I can see it on the outside edges. It's kind of apparent. But even then, if you're wanting to take on this project, do not do what I just did. Just, if you're like, take them out, put them in a piece of cardboard like this, aligned like this bell housing is, and make sure they go back in the exact same position they did, because what I did was not recommended. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, no, you take these bolts out one at a time and individually place them in positions to where you will know that that's how they go right back into the holes that they are. So just letting everybody know that now. So I've replaced all the bolts that I took out, just so you guys can see. They're all back in the housings right where they were. The bell housing is right here. That's basically it. It was just those bolts. So now I'm going to try and take off this end cap right here that attaches the spline. And I'm almost positive there's probably a seal behind this. There's going to be some goop and some gunk that probably just ends up oozing out of this old transmission. Or, I mean, I don't know how old this transmission is, but, you know, you just want to make sure that you take caution. I am not going to use a impact on any of these bolts because they should not have been tight enough to be impacted. Only the bell housing should have been impacted. These bolts should not have any more than 50 foot-pounds. I mean, like your standard head gasket bolts do have 50 foot-pounds. There's no way that these things should have anything more than 40 or 50 foot-pounds on them. So, and with the way that the transmission's now accessible, it's easier to take them off. So I just want to let everybody know, yeah, this is where I'm going to try and do this. I can also see that there are several bolts back here that come to the this midway section. Like, I do believe there was. Yeah, this one right here. I'm kind of curious as to what that one's doing right there. So we'll get to that soon enough. But this cap's going to end up coming off for the input to the engine. Okay, so if anything, I'll probably be smart and also count the splines on this, simply because I would like to know what spline count this is. I'm almost positive it's 21, but you never know. So just be smart, take time, and do it yourself. Okay, now that the cap's off, this is your full input shaft. I'm going to replace the bolts just like I've done with these ones. You can see that there is a little snap ring right here that it's going to be need to be removed. I'm almost positive that this is just for some sort of seal right here. I'm going to have to split the case apart too, so that's the next step, but I'm just looking at what would be next too. You know, I'm just getting a feel for everything, but I do see the snap ring right there, so I am going to have to remove that. So I'm going to do that next, and then I'll work from there. Okay, so I can tell that this is a pretty much grenaded transmission. You can see that it's missing the balls in the bearing right there. And if you look even a little bit further back, you can actually see that's missing a tooth right there too. Right there. There is no tooth when you can see that there are several teeth all the way around. So I wonder what gear that is. To me that looks like 5th. It might be 5th. I'm assuming 5th is right here. But I'll have to look into it. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, you can see that one's got a chunkums on a gear. So I don't know. Maybe I can salvage both of them by combining the two. I don't know. I'd have to take the other one out of my truck, and that's going to be a pain in the ass. I wanted to just swap them. Makes things a lot easier. But yeah, basically that came off the bearing right as I was just messing with it. I was looking at it, and I was just like, wow. So I just thought I'd let everybody know. Okay, so the next step is I'm taking out this one bolt, and then after that I'm going to split this this case in two, and we'll basically see what's inside. Okay, everybody, I am following a Yoda Tech W56 rebuild. This should be very similar to the what is it, G52? I'm almost positive it's basically the same rebuild. So I'm gonna link the information below when I do post this video. So I just want everybody to know that this is a picture reference. I'd much rather everybody see video. At least video, you kind of get a sense of how the person's doing when they're doing the video. So after I pulled the bolts out, I made sure that they're all still in their places that they came out, top being that one, and then so forth on either side. I noticed a couple of gear chunks came out somewhere when I lifted this up. And then also I took out the sensor that's right there. I'm not quite sure. It does look like a pressure sensor, but to me it also looks like it's a speed sensor of some sort. So, I mean, I haven't looked into these things for a long time. It must be a speed sensor because I doubt the transmission fluid has this is a manual transmission. There should be no pressure sensor in this. So, yeah, but what gets me is that that's probably the speed sensor, and then the sensor that goes into the transfer case would probably be the four-wheel drive sensor. So, or four-wheel drive light engage. So that's why I think that's the actual speed sensor, because it goes into the transmission. So yeah, I took out all the bolts, and then yeah, just cracked it a little bit. It came apart fairly easy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this whole shift unit right here, as this this rail right here slides forward as I pull back. So let's see if I can do this on camera. I'd like to get, like I said, a camera's a lot easier. So I'm going to pull it just a little bit at a time. You can see the rails going. Okay, well, I feel a little bit of binding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back to you guys right now. See, there's the top dowel right there to align it. yeah, I can see it's splitting apart, but I want to make sure that everything's good. So let me get back to you guys. Okay, so the shift rail did not want to come off very easily. I'm not quite sure why it was hung up. I'm gonna have to look at why. Where's it at? Right here. I'm gonna have to look at what was going on here, because it just did not want to come off of this thing. And what ended up happening was that I was catching on this there's a retaining spring and a ball bearing right here that will I mean, I don't see it not coming out, in my honest opinion, but yeah, you don't want to lose that right here. So what happens is it goes down in this little hole right here, and if you look, I mean, to me, I would want to take that out before sliding this whole entire case off. Otherwise, you have a potential chance of not only ruining the spring, because, I mean, I was pounding it off very slightly. I mean, I'm hoping I didn't damage the spring very much. But, yeah, that was what it was hanging on, because this did not want to slide off. It didn't want to come out. And just didn't want to come out the rear end. And that's what was happening. And so the spring's still in there. See if you can see it. Yeah, see, there's a spring right there. And I'm almost positive that's the spring. Hoping I didn't lose the spring. Yeah, it feels like a spring. And then I put the ball bearing back in there. It's roughly similar to the ball bearing on the other side that was grenaded. It's a pretty hefty ball bearing, but it's a detent bearing, and it sits in these little grooves right here as you shift. So you do not want to lose that for sure. Do not want to lose the spring as well, and it's all retained by this bolt right here. So that's why I'm glad I kind of did this all on a cardboard surface. But you can also see that I chunkumed the gear right there. Where is it at? Right there. Somewhere where, yep, right there. Looks like it's chunkumed. But we'll just look and make sure. I want to get a visual of everything on this. So let's just make sure. I saw a tooth missing on this one. To me, that looks like that's chunkumed, but I don't know if there's a timing issue or if that's just an engagement issue. But it looks like a tooth is clear right off this right here, so I'm not quite sure. You never know. It looks to be like it's actually made that way if you look at it, because it's even got a little line and everything. So it doesn't look like any of these gears up here are bad. So what I'm going to do is that follow that guide and see what it says about taking this other case off, so that way I can see all the gears and bearings together. So everybody, I'm back at it again. You can see from this side the bearings shot, obviously, but I was wondering why the second part of the case didn't want to crack. What ended up happening was that I forgot. I noticed that this one, I removed the wrong snap ring on this. I actually removed the snap ring from the shaft that retains the bearing, not the actual outer snap ring. So you can see this one has an outer snap ring as well as this one. You can see this is the larger snap ring that went around it, and that's the one that goes around the shaft, not the actual bearing. So you're going to want to remove that before this whole case is going to crack. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'll crack the case. Okay, I'm going to turn off that bright light here real quick. This thing is a gift, and it helps me see a lot of good stuff, and it has the plugs. But with the center case, yeah, obviously this thing should be off by now, but what's going on is that the bearings are grabbing onto the casing, and I'm having to smash them through. The lower bearing right here is a lot easier to do. It's not that difficult. That one's on more free play. It's this one right here that's busted, that's causing the issue, and I'm having to pound it through. And I'm using this drift right here, this metal piece of or this metal, and technically I should actually grab a drift inside that's more precise and do it. But the thing is that I need a good whack side, and I'm doing my best. The bearing's shot. But you don't want to mess up the inner walls of this bearing. Otherwise, you'll just never get them right and sealed. It's going to be impossible. So that's the reason why what I'm doing is I'm doing it very carefully, of tapping it through and making it sure that I'm not grabbing on anything. I'm just basically sticking to this lip right here. And you can see there's an actual lip on the inner side right here past this snap ring right here that you don't want to grab, but like it's the inner side, that little itty bitty bit, not this tapered part right here, because that's what's going to do it, and that's the actual bearing itself. And you want to make sure that you grab onto that and you push it back so that this casing is going to come out. Because I mean, the forum that I saw, they made it look like it's very easy to get the casing split from the other side. What I'm going to do right now is I have a jack right here. I'm going to have a jack on this other side. So I'm going to jack up both the splines, so at least they're sitting on the shaft portions and just resting on those shaft portions. And that way this case can split off on its own, independent of this section. A lot of people say put this in a vise or something. I have no idea how to do this, because of the fact is that this is heavy. Everything's weighted down on the case already. I need to independently free float these two shafts, so that, and this center casing portion, so that way this can just freely move on its own. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to sit there with some jack stands and try and do what I can, and then some 2x4 or was it 4x4s to try and lift up the center portion as well. Jack stands can always be shifted up and down. We'll just use the 2x4s to do what we can. And if I have to just rest on the jack stands, then that's it. You know what I mean? That's all she wrote. There's nothing I can do. So yeah, just letting everybody know how I'm trying to get this rear casing off. Alrighty, big day right now, man. This has been just a giant pain in my ass, and you can clearly see. So excuse me, I don't have a lot of chain, so this is like the only thing I can kind of create. Using my welder to weld up like a little piece of plate with, and 4 chains, so that way it grabbed it at 4 points. This could not for the life of me slide off, would not come off. That bearing, you can see that bearing is destroyed, and I don't know if it freaking swelled up or something, but yeah, so it wouldn't come off, wouldn't slide off. I even tried to use a puller. Like, if you could see, there's a hole in the center of that. It's actually threaded, and I was actually trying to use it as a puller to on the snout right here, and obviously with some cloth between it, but yeah, would not pull off. It was literally just twisting off of that tip, and you know what I mean, like rotating to where it would just work itself off. Yeah, and it would not work. So I had to literally hang it up from my pull-up bar. This thing's not light, and use a hammer and this to just tap it out. It was the upper bearing right there, the upper one that was just grabbing. I literally could pick it up, and it would only, like, see how much it's off? Yeah, that's about as much as it would come off, and then it would literally just hold it. I could pick it up completely off the floor, and it would hold it, but just that one bearing. So that's how I was able to get that one bearing off. So now I can slide it off, and I can see the extent of the damage because there was teeth coming out. So I can see which gears stripped and what to do. So okay, so this is the final product. Once I hung that the trans and was able to get that bearing off, this is what you're left with. You can see the race is still on here. This is the bearing, the center portion of the bearing. But when I got into the transmission, you can clearly see that there's the damage right there. it's chunked. Fourth gear is essentially chunked because, okay, so the way this transmission is, the G52 is a little bit different than the W56. A few more gears rest up here than in the W56 or the forum that I was following. And from what I understand is that reverse and fifth gear are right here on the G52/G54. And then this is your one through 4 right here. So you've got your first gear right here, your second gear, third gear, and then fourth gear. Now the way this all works is that pretty much everything is all pressed on except your fourth gear. Your fourth gear is I think it's I'm almost positive it's a 1-to-1 ratio, which is why it's actually essentially like welded onto the entire shaft, because you have the 1-to-1 power ratio right there. So every single one of these things can be pulled off, but when you buy a new input shaft, it comes with fourth gear on it. So this is going to need a new input shaft, and I've also noticed that I've chunked the counterbalance shaft teeth on fourth, so I also need a new counterbalance shaft as well. So aside from the bearings, synchros, seals, and everything that come with a kit that's needed to rebuild this, I'm going to need the counterbalance shaft and the input shaft. But at least I know that all the other gears are good. So I mean, honestly, what I could do is I could take my old transmission, utilize the counterbalance shaft and input shaft, and well, actually, see, I would assume that on my other one, because I chunked third, the counterbalance shaft would need to be replaced anyway. So a lot of the time when you chunk a gear, you're gonna need to replace the counterbalance shaft. I doubt that you're gonna chunk a gear and have a perfect counterbalance shaft. So yeah, and you can clearly see the counterbalance shaft is back here, and it's got the gear right here for fourth, gear right there for third, gear right there for second, and if you look back there, you'll find the gear right here for first. And that's basically the counterbalance shaft. What I wanted to show everybody is you can see that the gears are still good. Simply because I'm rebuilding this with the new shaft. I'll buy the synchro, you know, the whole kit. Cobra Transmission sells parts for these if you need them. So Marlin Crawler is also another place that you can get your transmission rebuilt. I like to do a lot of the things myself. It doesn't mean that they're not quality. It doesn't mean that they can't help you. Lead times vary. Product availability varies. That's what happens when you're dealing with a really high quality company. So it's just, that's the way it is. I mean, I could have this rebuilt by Marlin Crawler. I might just go about doing it myself. As of everything right now, it's like flipping a coin. As long as I know what I need and what my options are. I mean, sometimes you can have pressure cracks. I mean, you can have a lot of other damage that's involved with this system that you can't see, but at least I know that the large portion of the damage that is relied on a gear set, I can visually see, and I can say, hey, that needs to be replaced. All the other components are minuscule compared to the gears and the shafts. So I wanted to make sure that this video is for everybody, and they can see and disassemble their own transmission, 5-speed manual transmission for a Toyota pickup or a 4Runner, from the G52 year all the way up to the W56. I'm almost positive these things are going to look very similar. So use this video as a guide to at least diagnose your own issues, and then you can go from here. So, like I said, I'm considering taking this and pulling it all apart. I'm considering sending it in. It's kind of a flip of the coin right now, but at this moment in time, I at least know that I need a new counter shaft, because of the teeth that were ground down because of this fourth gear, which is the input shaft. And then obviously the input bearing was blown, but that comes with the whole synchro, seal kit, and everything like that. I wish Marlin Crawler actually would stock these. I should just get the Marlin Crawler W54 kit, because this actually had, or not W5, G54. This actually had a G54. I was told it was a G52 transmission out of an 84 4Runner, exactly like mine. But I'm coming to find out that it could be a G52, my apologies. Told it was a G52, could be a G54. This is the bearing that was busted all to hell. And let's see if you can actually see it. Where is it? Right there. Come on. Focus. See if it'll focus. Come on. Focus. I'm going to try and get it to focus. I need that. Oh, that's what it is. My bad. It won't get the number on it. But basically, the number on this bearing is for a G54 transmission on Marlin Crawler's website. So either this is a G54, because obviously the only difference between the two are the bearings, or somebody took a G52 and upgraded it to G54 internals. From what I understand, the forward shift and top shift are what actually differentiate the two, but like I said, these transmissions vary very drastically, and Marlin Crawler is your go-to when it comes to information. So I'm basically showing this for anybody that just wants to learn. So I'm going to need a new bearing, or just the whole set. So yeah, this is the final video for actually splitting open a Toyota four-wheel drive transmission and diagnosing your issues. So once you're at this point, you at least have a better understanding of what's going to happen. So best luck to everybody out there, and choose wisely, and happy off-roading.